Blessings, good evening. We have a few questions have come in, so try to answer them. First one is, Lumpur, is it okay to meditate or chant when lying down? Like as when we go to sleep at night, or before we go to sleep at night. Well, the Buddhist path centered particularly around the Noble Eightfold Path, practice of Satipatthana, 4 foundations of mindfulness. And right at the beginning, the Buddha talks about cultivating mindfulness and clear comprehension in every posture. So that includes lying down, because it is one part of life. And so we want to practice mindfulness when we're lying down, just as we do it when we're sitting, walking, standing. There's different reasons we lie down. One is we're just physically tired, but not necessarily sleepy. Another is we're going to sleep at night, say. Another maybe just when we're ill. So there's different reasons you might lie down. Not always because you're about to fall asleep. But as we know, when you lie down, it's very easy to fall asleep. So it's not recommended as a posture to practice meditation in normally. Normally you sit cross-legged, as we just recited in the Anapanasati Sutta. It's the standard. Sit down with your back erect and your legs crossed and meditate on the breathing, or practice walking meditation. These are the classic postures, but because we do lie down, most people lie down every day, often for many hours, when they go to sleep or before they go to sleep. So it is a perfectly valid time to practice mindfulness. But maybe not the time you choose to do your meditation practice as such, because you might do it in the sitting posture. But if you're meditating regularly, then you'll find quite naturally you might want to practice mindfulness before you fall asleep at night, as you're lying down. So the classic instruction might be lie on your right side, what we call the lion posture, with your hand supporting your head, and you practice Anapanasati as you're lying down until you fall asleep. And even when you wake up, carry on. So first thing in the morning, even in the middle of the night, if you wake up, go back to the breath and establish mindfulness. You could recite Buddho as well. You recite Buddho, Buddho until you fall asleep. Start reciting Buddho when you wake up, and so on. Whatever your meditation object that you're using regularly, you can use it right to the point where you fall asleep, right from the point where you wake up. It can be quite helpful. If you are meditating before you go to sleep, then you find that generally you sleep well. Generally you don't have nightmares or restlessness. So it seems to have good effects on the mind and even good effects on our health and our body. Occasionally you hear of people who have meditated just before they fall asleep in the lying down posture and enter a state of samadhi. And mindfulness has to be strong, good, clear, and faith is there, the energy and effort is there. And they go to sleep in a state of samadhi. And that samadhi stays with them all night. And then they wake up in the morning and the samadhi is still there. So that's possible as well. You might call it one of the benefits of meditating as you fall asleep. It's even possible to enter a state of jhana lying down, as long as you're not moving and wriggling around. So there's great potential in the lying down posture. Of course, we lie down at other times, so another time when people try to maintain mindfulness is when they're ill, and maybe they are forced to lie down through their illness, symptoms, whatever's wrong. But they want to practice mindfulness in that posture. And it's hard. One, because you might fall asleep, and you have to work against that. Two, just because you might be very weak if you're ill. It's hard to establish mindfulness on an object when you're ill. But then you practice doing that, and sometimes people have very good results. They don't give in to their fragility, lack of energy, pain even, and they manage to establish some mindfulness when they're ill. And I've seen particularly monks, but not just monks, lay people as well. But I've known quite a few monks who have meditated through serious illness, injuries, and really use their mindfulness like as a refuge when they maybe have to lie on their back or their side for many hours or days or even longer. So yes, you can meditate in that posture. It's not the posture of choice when you're learning because you fall asleep easily, but still you can do it. And it brings many benefits, and if you enter a state of samadhi as you're lying down, what happens is more or less the same as when you're sitting up or walking. Your body becomes very light. Maybe the factors of samadhi, piti, sukha, one-pointedness arise, even when you're lying down. So it's not an absolute impediment to meditating and entering a state of samadhi or reflecting, practicing vipassana as you're lying down, on contemplating the impermanence of feelings in the body, sensations, thoughts and memories coming up in your mind, sounds and things going on around you. The practice of contemplation of vipassana, developing insight into the three characteristics, can be done again in the lying down posture. You can even chant when you're lying down. If you have an attitude of respect, you're practicing mindfulness. You may not be able to put your hands together, but you just quietly recite a verse, a sutta or a verse or something to yourself. That's also quite possible, and of course that you might see that when you're in the lying down posture, practicing mindfulness, you're preparing for whenever the last moment of your life is. It's not the only posture we die in, but it's the most common one, isn't it? Lying down on a bed somewhere and you pass away, but you may practice dying when you're lying down sometimes, just as a little exercise. So like when you go to sleep at night, just imagine, maybe if I was to fall asleep, I would, and not wake up, that's what death is. How would I want my mind to be as I pass away lying here on my bed? And so you maintain mindfulness, maintain a wholesome state of mind, contemplate, let go. One danger with that though is I know some people who have contemplated death just before they fall asleep, and then they don't fall asleep because they get so tense thinking about the subject of death that they can't fall asleep. So it depends on the person and your attitude, I think. Next question. What importance should we give to having a Buddhist funeral? Well, in the West, non-Buddhist countries, then funerals often become very individual things. So everyone wants their own version of a funeral. If they're giving instructions before they die, not everyone does give instructions, but nowadays the sort of people tell you what they want, and they often have all their different ideas and wish lists for their funeral. More traditional Buddhist funerals, usually are conducted with Sangha present, if possible. Invite monks to come and chant. The traditional things they chant at funerals are what we call the Matika chanting, or also the Abhidhamma chanting. Teachings, reflections, usually in Pali. Usually some simple ritual like bowing to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, moments of silence, remembering the one who's passed away. I mean, anyone could probably appreciate a moment of silence reflecting on the life of the one who's passed away, honouring them, remembering them. Don't have to be Buddhist to do that, but it fits with Buddhist practice. You might quietly meditate, think of them and wish them well, send thoughts, or we say dedicate merit to the one who passed away. Also teachings, getting teachings from Sangha if you have the possibility. Invite Sangha to give teachings reminding us of the impermanence of life, the importance of making good karma, whatever aspect of the Dhamma seems appropriate. Dhamma teachings are very good because it's a time when people are often open to the Dhamma because your mind is very kind of aware. Somebody you know has just died at a funeral. So for the living, the Dhamma teaching and the chanting and the ritual, and also usually offerings are made to the Sangha. These are all very wholesome activities that calm people down, bring faith and bring up good reflections. Nowadays, I guess the world is a bit wealthier, so you notice in Buddhist funerals the sort of tendency is to make it more and more focus on the sort of material side. Lots of flowers and decorations, food if there's some kind of reception after the funeral. All these kind of extras can often take up a lot of time and energy for the ones doing the funeral. So some people discourage that, particularly people who meditate and practice Buddhism. Often they say, well, don't make a fuss, you no need to spend a lot of money. Or if money is spent, often funerals are a time to do dana in the name of the one who passed away. If they have left funds, often their funds, sometimes they're distributed or given to charity, to good causes, either supporting Sangha, building monasteries, or some charitable cause. It's very common. But often people are wanting to make this big funeral with flowers and decoration and food and all kinds of expenses, which can be off-putting and become an end in themselves maybe, and distract everyone from what a funeral is, which is remembering, honouring the person who passed away and thinking about the impermanence of life. So the more you can bring it back to the Dhamma, the practice of Dhamma, I would say the better. And monks often lead the way in that. So even though some teachers who are very well known seem to have very big funerals, they're really focusing on the practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, Dhamma talks, meditation, chanting. Even Ajahn Chah's funeral and many teachers of his era, they have had massive funerals, a lot of organisation, a lot of money spent, but it was all in the purpose of practicing the Dhamma, remembering the Dhamma. Many forest monks have very simple funerals, very simple funeral pyre, some decoration but not much, and everyone just sits around meditating, listening to talks, chanting, paying their final respects to the monk who's passed away. And often it's quite a simple, open-air, natural affair. A really good one I went to, if you can say such a thing, a good funeral. But Lumpur Buddhadasa, he wrote a will and said how he wanted his funeral done. And he said he didn't want a lot of fuss, so his body was kept in a very simple coffin, carried in a procession of monks, lay people, put on a pile of logs, very simple funeral pyre out in the forest. There weren't any buildings around. All the monks and lay people just sat on the ground in the forest around the funeral pyre and watched as it was set light. Everyone helps to set light to the funeral pyre. That's the one way of showing respect. Then go and sit down, meditate. And as he was being cremated, as the body was burning, they played a talk that Ajahn Buddhadasa had given himself at someone else's funeral. So he's talking all about contemplating the impermanence of life. As you watch this body burn, contemplate how a body is made up of 4 elements, goes back to the 4 elements. And it was so powerful because it was his words about a funeral, about impermanence, as he was burning, or his body was burning. So a very memorable but very simple funeral. So, as I said, there's a lot of variations in people's funerals, even in Buddhist countries. Some are more elaborate, some are more simple, but I would say use it as a chance to practice and learn Dhamma in one way or other. This is for the living. And if you're making your will, if you're saying how you want your funeral to be, well, maybe keep that in mind for those, as your gift to those who are still alive. Say, make it a time for Dhamma practice. Recently, a few years ago, one of the most famous monks in Thailand wrote in his will before he died, I don't want a big funeral because there's a lot of money wasted on things that are not that important, decorations and food and events, all of that. He said didn't want any of that. Just want people to practice the Dhamma, and he wanted his body donated to science, which is becoming more popular for organ transplant, for research, medical research. So there was no big cremation and big event. And he also didn't want people fighting over his relics because he was considered to be an enlightened monk. So that was Lumpur Kun. So his body went to Khon Kaen University. So there's different things we can do with sort of instructions as we die, but think of the people who will be left and try and make things easy for them. But it depends on your taste, what you see as important. But for the living, we try to honour the dead, respect them, and use it as a time to practice the Dhamma. Next question. Dear Lumpur, to walk the Noble Path is not an easy task. For the past 3 years, I started strongly keeping precepts and developing mentally. Lately, I have doubts in my practice. I am having the perception that the current state that I'm in is going to be the furthest I could achieve. It is a state whereby I will not rise beyond the border and drop out of it as long as I am practicing whatever I have been practicing now. What do you think I should focus on in order to make my practice more developed? Thank you. Well, a huge part of the practice, as the Buddha said, is down to the practice of patience, endurance. Keep going, don't give up. That's a practice in itself, isn't it? Keep going with the precepts, keep going with meditation, training and practice, developing mindfulness, reflecting on the Dhamma. Keep going. So it's that determination not to quit, not to give up. How much you practice in terms of meditation, how well you practice, how much dana you do, the practice of generosity, how you can help people around you. There's a lot of variation here, but the idea is not to give up completely. Sometimes we are energized to do more, sometimes there's obstacles and distractions and we do a bit less, but not give up, I'd say is the first thing. If you don't give up, you'll gain something, and who knows that you've reached the limit of your ability in this life. You may still have many more good things to come. that's uncertain. So you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to learn any more than this or get any more than this. That could be our own Mara, our own delusion, tricking us into complacency or giving up. So there's always more to learn. Every situation, every day, every moment, you can learn Dhamma from. Everything is teaching us. Every moment you can be more mindful. Every moment you can reflect on impermanence, not self, understand whether something you're thinking is wholesome or unwholesome. You can do that any time. So of course, sometimes we become discouraged or fed up in life, but this is part of the practice. You have to see it as a challenge to learn from and go beyond. And maybe look into things that will support your practice, like associating with fellow Dhamma practitioners, Kalyana Mitta, teachers who will help to energize you, inspire you, give you good examples. And you have to be creative as well. Think, what can you introduce into your life that will support Dhamma practice? What bad habits do you need to shed, give up, and what good habits do you need to take on or develop more? And then you sometimes have to sit down and just talk to yourself and make plans, get plans, strategies ready, and then put them into practice. If you do kind of have this sort of doubt that you can't really further your practice anymore, well, of course, that's a good excuse just to give up and hang around doing not very much, and then life can easily drift by, can't it? Time just goes, and suddenly you're old and you missed a lot of good opportunities. So see every day, every part of your life is important, and every day is an opportunity to do more practice. So try to fight against complacency. Dear Luang Por, my question is regarding a phrase, act as if, which means for me to adjust my glum face with a smile when I'm feeling slightly sad. This is done for me and not a cheeky grin for the outside world. A change of shape, I might call it. Another example is when sitting for hours in stillness meditation and my back begins to hurt, I put effort into overriding those initial thoughts, including, I need to end this because I hurt, or I just want out of here. I notice when I change my thoughts to, where am I most comfortable now, I can focus there. Or I might think, experiencing pain now, but I know it's impermanent and I can continue in my effort because I know I can. I did it last month and I stayed sitting. This statement of act as if, I'm not always glum, so looking for brightness, and my other pain-related examples have been called by a lay teacher my fake moments, as in fake it until you make it. I am not sensing I am acting in a fake manner with my thoughts being redirected, yet I'm hoping you can let me know if my thinking is inappropriate in terms of Dhamma practice. If there are different internal words I would benefit from, please share. Your guidance is most welcome. Well, I think you made a good point. Sometimes just how we think and the words we bring up, the reflections we bring up, the perceptions we bring up in our mind affect us. And if you meditate regularly, it sounds like you do, you find sometimes you just introduce a better thought or a bit of Dhamma wisdom as you're sitting, as you're facing a problem, and that's enough to get you out of the problem, like carry on sitting when you want to stop, or it's impermanent, or smile in the face of some pain or unpleasant mental state. these simple little reflections sometimes do work. So yeah, I wouldn't put them down, act as if, it's like, I guess you could call that a sort of right intention. You're feeling glum, you're feeling depressed, angry, act as if you're not angry. So you introduce the idea of the opposite of what you're experiencing. And the right intention is to cultivate the intention of non-ill will. So if you're experiencing ill will, just bringing up, reminding yourself, I'm not going to hold on or indulge my ill will, I'm going towards non-ill will. Sometimes that's enough to get you out of it, or at least redirect your thinking and your energy. So I wouldn't say it's all wrong. If it works for you, if it has worked for you, carry on. A lot of meditation things we learn through experience and experimenting, and small reflections might work for one person, or they've worked for you once, and maybe you go back to them, use them again. That's part of meditation, just learning what works, what helps put your mind in a wholesome state, and you can work through some of the unwholesome karma that's arising. And all these words, fake it until you make it. I mean, these are sort of modern words. In the end, it's all just mental formations, isn't it? Proliferation, thinking around things. Whatever label you put on it, your aim is to bring up enough mindfulness to know thinking as thinking, mental proliferation as mental proliferation, if it's wholesome, if it's unwholesome. Bring in some wisdom. Once you've established mindfulness, reflect what's going on. It's impermanent, it's not self. Is it wholesome, is it not? What am I thinking about? Where's it leading to? Is it making me more agitated and stressed? Are these thoughts, worth developing? Because some thoughts are quite useful and good. So, I guess the term "fake it" is not very good. You don't want to deceive yourself or deceive others. But if you understand what it means, you can use it. Perhaps you can try. Imagine if you're an arahant. Imagine if I was an arahant, how would I be? Perhaps it could work for you, it might work for some people. You certainly can introduce what you might call Buddhanusati or Sanghanusati into your thinking in a situation. If the Buddha was here, or if a teacher was here, or how would the Buddha respond to this? How would the enlightened or the wise teacher that I respect respond or act in this situation? That's probably a very common thing people do. It inspires them, gives them some wise reflection in a moment when they're not sure what to do or they're facing suffering. So you have to see what works for you, what ways of thinking. You understand it's just a thought, a mental state, but you can use it to lead on to something better, to give you some wisdom, give you some strength of mind, keep you going in a situation. Like many people who lived with Luang Por Chah found him such a powerful, kind of inspiring presence that later, after he passed away, just think of Luang Por Chah and can bring up so many wholesome dhammas. You're not Luang Por Chah and you're not enlightened like Luang Por Chah, but you can use his character, what you can remember of him, his words, his presence, to inspire you to bring up good things. And sometimes even just to go straight into samadhi. Possible. You recollect the Buddha or you recollect a teacher. As I said, it'd be called Sanghanusati. And you just recollect the qualities, some aspect of that teacher or the Buddha, and your mind just calms down, drops all the hindrances. Quite possible. Could be listening to a talk as well from a teacher, or it could be just remembering, recollecting them. Dear Luang Por, I have 2 questions if you have the time. I hope you can help me through my confusion. With reading the tenfold path, including right knowledge, number 9. What's that? Samajnana dasana. And then right release, number 10. So that's Samma Vimutti, I guess. I'm confused. Oh. After experiencing revulsion towards form, feeling, perception, volitional formulas, it's usually volitional formations, but that includes formulas, I guess, and consciousness, one becomes dispassionate, and through dispassion, one's mind becomes liberated. Yep. I'm not finding commentary regarding right knowledge specifically. Is this sutta stating that the experiencing of dispassion is the right knowledge that precedes right release, even though there is no specific mention? It also states, when liberated, there comes the knowledge it's liberated. And I understand this is to be the mind that is liberated. It sounds here like liberation precedes the knowledge that one is liberated. Perhaps order of 9 and 10 are not important yet. What seems confusing is knowledge preceding liberation, or liberation preceding knowledge. And does this question have any importance? And near the end of the sutta, this is from the Samyutta Nikaya, it says, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived, and what had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. What does the Buddha mean by there is no more for this state of being? I don't understand this state of being in this context. Can you please help? My questions are long and involved. I thank you kindly. Well, there are mentions, maybe not many, of these two other kind of factors or additional parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. Samajnana dasana, right knowledge and vision of the way things are, and Samma Vimutti, the liberation. But they're seen more as the results, and you don't need to focus so much on the results, although sometimes it's good to hear what you're aiming for in the practice. You're focusing more on the Noble Eightfold Path, bringing those factors up in your mind and in your behavior. And the Noble Eightfold Path will naturally result in right knowledge and vision and right liberation. So it implies right knowledge and liberation anyway, without mentioning them, if you see what I mean, because they're just a natural result of developing the Noble Eightfold Path. You could say right knowledge is knowledge of the four, penetrating knowledge, complete penetrating knowledge and realization of the Four Noble Truths. And that's what leads to liberating the mind from ignorance, craving, attachment, greed, anger, delusion, all the things that start to drop away through practicing, cultivating Noble Eightfold Path. Obviously, there's different levels of liberation. The liberation of a Sotapanna, the first level of enlightenment, and then Sakadagami, Anagami, and then Arahant, completely liberated from all ignorance and all craving and attachment. As far as the state of being goes, bhava, so bhava precedes birth. So for an arahant who is now no longer subject to birth and death and the suffering that comes with birth and death, they've reached the deathless nibbana, they have no more becoming, because that is the preceding cause for birth. So becoming is like the accumulation of all our craving and an attachment and karma, the kind of the world that we create for ourselves and what we want to keep going, and part of being, or bhava, is you just want to keep existing, don't you? You don't want to die unless you're very caught into self-destructive sort of views. Normally you just want to keep this state going. So it's almost synonymous with your life and how you view life and the the way your mind is. So it could be better or worse, it could be higher or lower, superior, inferior, so it could be destined for bhava or birth in the in the lower realms, because you created a lot of suffering for yourself and you're just stuck in that. Or it could be more refined, heavenly birth, or human birth, heavenly birth, or even Brahma birth, if you say you develop jhanas, rupa jhanas, arupa jhanas. But it's all still bhava, it's all still becoming prior to birth. There's still attachment there, there's still karma making, sense of I that's making karma. Basically wanting to continue on in that existence. But if you've broken this whole cycle of cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, breaking the cycle by developing right view, as seeing everything as impermanent, it's not self, as suffering is not self, breaking the cycle of craving, attachment, becoming, then you have right view and right vision. You've had penetrating vision of the Four Noble Truths. Your mind is liberated from all ignorance, all attachment, so then there's no more birth. So our practice is about applying or cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path to the point where we're seeing things as they are, not to be grasped at, not to be craved, not to be attached or clung to. And that, particularly, we're talking about the 5 khandhas, as you mentioned earlier. And not to see them as self, not to grasp at them as self. As far as when I'm liberated, there comes a knowledge of liberation. Yeah, well, you're liberated from craving, attachment, ignorance. So you know you're liberated once you are liberated. So the knowledge of liberation comes after you're liberated. I mean, words are words, but basically you have to do the thing and then you know you've done it. So you're walking to this hall for evening meditation. That's your goal, that's like the path, the Noble Eightfold Path. You step into the hall, you've reached the hall and stepped into it. It's like liberation. And then you look around and you go, I'm here. You know you're in the hall. You know you're liberated. So if you're not liberated yet, you haven't reached the hall yet, you can't say you've reached the hall. That's my simplistic version of it all. Experiencing of dispassion. Well, with right knowledge, you become dispassionate towards the things that you previously were passionate for. Craving is passion, isn't it? You want things, and you also passionately don't want things, the things you don't like or identify as bad for you or suffering. You don't want anything painful or that you don't like, so you passionately want to get rid of them. And then the things you do like, you're passionate for, and you keep wanting them and want to hold on to them and get more of them. But when you realize the suffering of all that, wanting and not wanting, and all the tiredness of the search for it, and then just the suffering and how it keeps you going through samsara and keeps proliferating the mind and bringing up all kinds of disappointments and conflicts and different kinds of suffering. When you've seen all that, you get weary and then you get dispassionate. You're like, your mind steps back, prefers non-proliferation, a state of dispassion, equanimity, not wanting, not wanting, just knowing. That's something better, a higher happiness, you might say. So with right knowledge you get dispassion, yes. So, a few different answers or clarifications, I hope, for your question. And that's the end of tonight's Q&A.